everybody, I am Marlene, I live in South Africa and I am a recorder teacher. I want to share my favorite Baroque repertoire for the treble recorder. So this will basically be advanced beginner, grade 2 to 3 and intermediate player, and later I'll maybe do something about the early advanced music. I like to give my students full works as soon as they are ready for it, and I prefer sonatas for this. So what is nice about sonatas, Baroque sonatas, is there are more of them that are spread out across musical levels. And you can do a full sonata much earlier than you can do a full concerto, where your first concerto will only be a movement, or one or two movements perhaps. You will be able to do full sonatas much earlier on. And that's because the level of a sonata is more uniform through the piece than that of concertos. I also like the musical depth that sonatas have. Sometimes concertos are very flashy, but there is not much depth in the composer's material other than showing off. Concertos are showing off virtuosity, and sonatas is more the teamwork between you and your accompaniment, and working with the material and the composer's style, I feel. So don't get me wrong, I don't say concertos are bad. I think everything's got their time and place, and especially for myself, the way I like to introduce my students to Baroque repertoire, and where I like them to start with fuller works, and I will definitely base it also on each person's needs and their personality. But I feel sonatas are very important on the development as a musician and as a Baroque player. Some of the perks are you get to know your ornaments very well. If you build it up stepwise, you don't jump into your first Handel sonata and having to learn all that ornaments and alternative fingerings all at once. Now, if you just build this up, you will arrive at your Handel sonata with the knowledge of all your ornaments and alternative fingerings and the style and so on. When you buy sonatas, the nice thing is you get the recorder part, the piano part, and then the bass instrument part, because everything is written for basso continuo. So you've got actually two accompanists, the keyboard player and then another player that doubles the bass. And you can actually make the nicest ensemble music out of anything, out of any of these, because of the enormous amount of sheet music you get in one book. When you buy a concerto, you usually get the piano reduction, which is all the orchestra parts condensed into a piano part. And if you want to play with a concerto with the orchestra, you need to buy or lend out or find IMSLP the music for the orchestra, which might be a bit of a slip. And when you buy everything, it's quite expensive. Okay. And I also think that everybody can benefit from playing sonatas, whether you only want to play for fun or only play film music or video game music. I think just doing a few, even of only the advanced beginner sonatas, will give you an enormous amount of musical experience that will benefit all your music. So let's get started. My first book is Fünf Leichtensuiten. This is by Edition Schott. The composer is unknown, but it's definitely Baroque. And these are suites, not sonatas. So A suite is a collection of dances, and there's the standard suite will be a minuet, a jig, and a glay, or allemande, or something like that. And what's nice about this book, you'll get to know the standard dances quite well. Let me see. What I also like about this book is, in comparison to books like Tunes from the Dancing Master or Playford, where the compound time signatures are sometimes notated in large time signatures like 6/4. This book also uses a different time signature for the compound. It uses 3/4 for jigs, which is usually written in 6/8, or in most modern editions would be written in 6/8. I think 3/4 reads a lot easier than 6/4, so I appreciate that. You need to be around grade 2 level, so you need to be fluent in D minor, in G minor and B flat major. You get a lot of C sharps. At least the first suite will only end on C sharp instead of moving between B and C sharp, which is quite difficult. There are a few tricky bits, a few tricky intervals, but further on I'll just give you a few examples. So this is the air from the first suite, and as you can hear, it's very nice. The trills are not marked in, but they are assumed, so mostly you'll trill at cadences. Here's the minuet. A jig. And so on. Personally, I like the first and the third suite the best. The second, fourth and fifth are a bit more tricky, especially rhythm wise, but this is definitely a worthwhile book to buy. So when my students learned all the different parts of a suite, I will start them by playing two dances together, and then 3, and then the entire thing, because at the beginning it's quite difficult to get the endurance to play an entire suite at once. Right, next is Sonata in B flat by Marcello. This is by edition Hortus Musicus. This is around grade 2 to 3 level. And this sonata you can play the entire thing. So I usually start my students with the last 3 movements, and then when they're comfortable with that, they can add the first 2 as well. The first 2 is a bit longer. I'll give you examples. This is the gavotte. And a very nice largo. And so forth. Yes, this is a very nice little sonata. As a side note, I don't think this piece is in the same book, but the sonata in E minor, also by Marcello, is also a nice piece. You can play the second and third movement. The others are a bit more tricky. Okay, now we go on to Thornowitz Sonata da Camera in G major. This is around grade 3 to 4 level. So the first movement has lots of different trill fingerings and it's an excellent place to get to know them. So forth. Okay, the second movement is a gavotte. It's a bit trickier. I would leave that out at first, but the saraband, minuet and jig at the end is very nice. Next up, another Thornowitz Sonata. This is the one in F. I don't have a number for that. This is also by Schott. So Thornowitz Sonata da Camera in F. If you don't buy anything else, you should really buy this one. So it's a very interesting first movement because it uses quite small note values, but it's quite slow. And then in the second movement you get to do ornaments in quite a fast tempo. And so on, and the gavotte. Okay, right. And the last one for this group of pieces is Marcello's Sonata, another Marcello Sonata. This is the Sonata in D minor, Opus 2, number 2. If I can find the recorder part. The first 3 movements is very nice. The last movement is a bit tricky. This is also grade, this one is grade 4-5 level. And allegro. So this is very nice. What is also excellent about all the sonatas I mentioned now, you don't need to add any other ornaments except for trills in most of the slow movements. In the next In my next video, I'll do in the intermediate section, you will have to start adding a bit of ornaments, but that's quite will be quite easy to do. So of course there are a few gaps between pieces, musical level wise, but you can always fill that gap with unaccompanied repertoire or contemporary or pop or anything that will fill the gaps in between. Also, there might be lots of other sonatas that I'm skipping now. I'm only talking about those I've used myself with my students and everybody liked them. Okay, hope you enjoyed.